Welcome everyone. Make sure you get comfortable. We'll be starting the stream here in about 5 minutes. Get a coffee, make yourself at home, enjoy the music. We'll just wait for a few people to filter in here, and we'll be starting in about T minus 4 minutes. Okay, I'll see you then. Hello, good morning, welcome to the stream. Welcome to take 2 for Cybersecurity for Small Business, the Essentials webinar. This time, even though I can once again see myself recording, the audio working, I just want to check in with the audience. I can see we have a couple of people here already. Is this working okay this time? Lovely to see people here. Once again, I do apologize for yesterday. It looked just like it did today, working perfectly, but hopefully this time the voice is coming through okay. We are going to move across to the presentation here in a second once I get confirmation that everything is working here perfectly. Give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Just going to double check on the volume here. Put the music back on for 1 second. All right, looks like we are good to go. So let's get across to the presentation here. Hello everyone, how's everyone doing this morning? Welcome back. If you were here yesterday, I do apologize. See, on my end, nothing looks any different to what it did yesterday. However, I can see that people can hear me, which is fantastic. So welcome. We are live on YouTube today as well. We did get that running, so the extra day's prep did help us establish a few things. So we are live on Facebook, we are live on YouTube. If you can't make it here for the live session, these videos will be available in both platforms via video on demand after the session. Just be a matter of going to the correct pages and playing that video whenever you have the time. We want to keep this to about a 30-minute presentation, so I better not spend too long here in the preamble. But once again, just want to let you all know that I'm very sorry for the technical issues yesterday, but it seems we have it all fixed for today. So, what are we covering today on cybersecurity for small business, the essentials? Well, this is what the agenda is going to look like. First thing, we're going to be talking about threat analysis for small business. What that will cover will be the key topics, the key threats that a small business might face when it comes to cyber crimes, scams, frauds, cybersecurity and information security issues. Now, this is only a 30-minute free webinar, so we're not going to have the time to focus on any one of these issues in a lot of depth. This is more of a grounding, giving you all of the essential information, the basics, giving you an understanding of what some of these terms you may have heard of before actually mean and what you can do as yourself, as an individual, as a business owner, as an employee, to meaningfully help protect your company, yourselves, people you love from these kinds of attacks. Obviously, if you want the more advanced information, if we want to target each or any of these specific threats, those will be the focus of future webinars, so tune in for those. The second topic will be security advice. So that will be that information about what you can actually do to help protect yourself, people you love, your business, things that you can put in place right now that will make a difference. And things, if you haven't got them in place, you should really consider implementing them because they are helpful protections against the types of threats we're going to talk about. We will also mention some future webinars that we have in the works for the rest of the year. Obviously, we're in the Christmas season. We're coming through to December shortly, very shortly, and it is that type of season for a lot of scams and frauds to be coming through. And we have a few extra webinars that'll focus on some of these things before the new year does get upon us there. There is also some other specific dates around some other grants and things that small business probably are looking into that we can assist you with as well. And then we'll leave time hopefully for some questions at the end. If there is, any questions from the people watching this on playback after the fact, please, in the comments on either video on the Facebook or YouTube page or the website, wherever it's hosted, please leave some comments if you have any questions there, and I will endeavor to reply to those as soon as I see them. Otherwise, you will see throughout the presentation my details. You can reach out to me on Facebook, on YouTube, on the website. You can email me, whichever, on LinkedIn, whichever method works best for you. You can reach out to me, ask me those questions, and I will do my best to give you some some answers and help you through that process. All right, so let's get this started. We only do have 30 minutes, and some of these things I want to spend some extra time on. So the first thing to go through today is threat analysis. Okay, so these are the most common threats that will be targeting small business, and have been the most common sort of threats that have targeted business in the past. We're going to start off with data breaches. Now, I'm sure we're all familiar with what a data breach is. We've seen it in the news quite a lot recently in Australia. It has been the focus of quite a few news articles. The biggest one being obviously the Medibank breach that happened recently. So what is a data breach though? So you may have heard about it, but do you really understand what it means for what a data breach is? So a data breach is an event where confidential, private, protected, or sensitive information is exposed to a person who is not authorized to access it. Now, this doesn't have to happen through a bad actor who infiltrates a system and gets access to this information and then releases it, right? That is one way this can happen. Outsiders get access to it and expose it, sell it, whatever it may be. This can also be internal. This can be employees. This can be people who have infiltrated the network inside your business. So what I'm saying is it's not solely external. There is internal capabilities here to a data breach, but whichever way you look at it, if someone has accessed this information, whether they're allowed to access it, if they're an employee, if they then expose that information to parties that should not be privy to this kind of information, you're the victim of a data breach. That information has been accessed by a party who should not have access to it, and that can cause yourself, your clients, your employees, all kinds of harm with that sensitive and confidential information being exposed. As I mentioned, the Medibank breach happened recently. I think it was around 4 million customers that were affected, and we're looking at about a $25 to $35 million sort of cleanup fee for Medibank as it stands currently. So quite a huge event. Now, something to look at is I will mention a few of the more larger events that have occurred relating to some of these threats, just to give you a clear understanding of what can happen at the top scale. But keep in mind that doesn't matter what kind of business you are, whether you're small, medium, or large, you are a target for these types of criminals. The criminals, the huge organizations that target these massive corporations for profit, the people doing this start somewhere. Typically, they will hone their skills on the smaller, less well-protected businesses because they're an easier target. Just because you may be a small fish in the pond doesn't mean there's not smaller people out there, sort of smaller hackers looking to target you to test their skills on, because you may not have the best protections and it's an easier target for them to test some things out. So just because you're not Medibank doesn't mean you're not the target of some of these individuals, okay? So that's important to look at. When we're talking threat analysis in the current environment, and this isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to make you realize what the current facts are, we're not talking about an if you become a target for cybercrime. We're talking about when. And what you can do as a business, as an employer, is manage how bad that outcome is. If you've protected yourself enough, hopefully when you are targeted by a cybercrime, a cyber threat, your systems are protected, the attack amounts to nothing. And even if there is sensitive information or systems exposed, you have a policy in place to protect yourself, and it is managed properly, and you can recover from that in no time at all for very little cost. That is what we're hoping for here. That's the best we can hope for, because, as I said, unfortunately in today's day and age, it's a matter of when, not if. Now, let's get back on track. So ransomware would be the next thing to talk about. Ransomware is, and you'll see in the list here, we have mentioned phishing and malware. So ransomware is a form of malware, but the reason I've put it here specifically by itself is because it is one of, or the most sort of common malware attack that can occur, and it is a very well-known sort of topic, so I wanted to make sure we covered it here. So, but what is ransomware? When we talk ransomware, so we've mentioned it is a form of malware, and that malware is used to lock an organization out from critical files and systems on a computer or network. the hackers, they would encrypt these files, and then they would demand payment from the individual, from the organization, in the form of, you pay me for an encryption key, and then I will give you that key that will unlock all of those files that I have taken control of. Now, unfortunately, this type of crime is fairly effective, because the cost of trying to obtain these files back through, your backups or other document control you have, or finding out exactly what has happened, can be huge. And the cost of doing that can sometimes be more than the cost of paying the ransom. However, you have to remember you're dealing with criminals here. So just because they promise that they will deliver you with this encryption key for a price, it doesn't mean that's always the way it's going to happen. You are dealing with criminals here who have broken the law to encrypt your networks. Who's to say they will keep their word when it comes to paying that ransom? But these types of things are normally dealt on a case-by-case basis, depending on who the criminals are that have done this type of attack, and what recommendations you get from the people helping you with the attack itself. So ransomware, it's a very hard thing to counter, because it can lock you out of systems. There has to be a system policy in place to help protect your organization from these types of things. And I mean, one of the biggest examples that happened this year was the Costa Rican government. It was targeted by a ransomware attack. It locked itself out of, and here come the bots. We did know this was going to happen. Let me just hide use. There we go. So that has been. There we go. So I will have to try and make sure we have some moderators in here next time to take care of this stuff. You would think that the platforms would have protections in place for this type of thing, but potentially not. So anyway, let's go back to here. Now, when we're talking ransomware, as I said, the Costa Rican government, their Ministry of Finance specifically was targeted by a ransomware attack, and that kind of sensitive information about financial, about all of the tax, that kind of thing for residents. That's a lot of information, a lot of very important information that was compromised, and obviously the cost of recovery is extreme. In fact, I believe it was declared a national emergency because of the level of compromise that occurred. All right, so let's go on to phishing and malware. As I mentioned, this is a grounding of these important bits of information, the essential bits to help you understand what these terms mean, how they may impact your business, and then we'll cover soon, things you can do to protect yourself from these types of threats. We will focus on more of these specific topics in the future, some future webinars, that type of thing, to help us crack down and look at specifically what some of these mean and specific protections you can put in place. But this is meant to give you an understanding so that you can approach future webinars with more knowledge. All right, so phishing and malware. So as we mentioned, phishing and malware is they're two buzzwords that I wanted to include here. So you've got ransomware, which is a type of malware, okay? And then you've got phishing, which is a type of social engineering, which you can see we're going to discuss in more detail in a second here. But these two things are some of the most popular attack vectors that will be used when targeting a business. Phishing itself is a scam that tries to get a person, so the human element here, to give up sensitive information by pretending to be something legitimate. And then piggybacking on that, malware is similar in that it commonly can hide in something that looks innocent or legitimate, and it will be used to infect a system or a network. So these two typically will come together. So when you've got a phishing attack that occurs on a network, let's say, for instance, it comes through via an email to someone who is a user on the network, there's a link, for instance. We all hear in training not to click that link, but in practice, these can be very deceptive. They can look very legitimate. Someone clicks that link, and unfortunately, they've allowed malware from that link to now be installed on that computer, which can send information back to the attacker, allow them to sort of see activities happening on the network that would give them information as to how they would attack the network in the future. expose vulnerabilities, that type of thing. So that's how these two work together. So there is a lot to be said here for, if you've got proper training and education, proper systems in place to detect malware, and then providing your employees with the proper training so that they understand what phishing looks like, what can they do if they have, how to report it, what you can do if you've been the victim of it. These are types of things we'll talk about in a second. Alright, so let's talk about web exploits next. Now, when we're talking web exploits, we're talking web-based applications. So that could be your website that's hosted online. It could be a social media platform you have up online. It could be any other form of web-based application that is being hosted with your information. Now, there is exploits and vulnerabilities in some of these programs, some of these hosting platforms that are common knowledge, or they can be probed for vulnerabilities by these bad actors, and that can allow them to exploit these vulnerabilities. So by exploiting these vulnerabilities in web-based apps, these bad actors might be able to gain access to sensitive website data. What kind of information do you store on your website? Do you store client lists, invoicing information? What do you really have on there? And in some cases, if the exploit is bad enough, is high level enough, high threat level enough, these bad actors may be able to gain complete control over the application, admin access, that type of thing. And at that point, once they've got control over that application, what do they have access to? Can they change information on your website? Can they link people that visit to other places, to other applications? Can they advertise dodgy products or ruin sort of your good name by changing information on the website? These are the vulnerabilities of having an online presence, okay? If it's not managed properly, if it's not secured and tested, there is the threat that someone could try to exploit it, and that exploitation can be quite horrific in the costs after the fact. All right, let's talk the last one here, social engineering. Pretty broad term, sorry, just knocked the microphone there. Pretty broad term, but what we're referring here to is malicious activity based on human interaction. So these are manipulations, tricks, and these types of things are devised to bypass security, okay? So all the security you may have, all the sort of virus protection systems, malware protection systems, a managed service provider who's looking at data coming in and out, looking at users, looking for potential threats. Unfortunately, all of these can be bypassed by social engineering because it is targeted at the human element. It's targeted at the person who already has access to your systems. That user profile is given permissions to bypass those securities so they can do their job, do their work, or you yourself as like the user admin, that type of thing. You have all the allowances, you can access anything on the network. If you yourself fall victim to something like social engineering and your accounts are compromised, the person who's done that compromise then bypasses all that additional security because they have your information. So that's why it can be so damaging, because it's one of those things where you can build up all these securities, but if this occurs, if you fall victim to this, all those securities don't really add up to much. So those are the key threats sort of analysis for what's targeting small business this year so far. These would be the big things to look at. You can see there's a bit more information on the screen that you may have read over sort of while I've been talking away. And we will come back to some of these in future webinars and talk in more about sort of specifics here, give you some examples, show you even some of these scams or threats in action so you can get an understanding of what these look like. That is what I want to do. Educate people, show them these threats in action so they can understand when they are up against these types of threats and what to do to help protect themselves, okay? So now that we've scared you into thinking that there's threats around every corner, it's not the intention. I want to give you some knowledge, some helpful advice to protect yourself. Put some things you can put in place right now to help stop some of these things from occurring. Now let's talk first of all about the most efficient protection that we should all have in place on our most vulnerable accounts, and that is 2FA or MFA. Now that stands for two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, and essentially it boils down to adding a second or third or fourth set of authentications when accessing an application. So for instance, let's say your email address. You log into that with your email address and a password, okay? If you've added another layer of authentication, it may send you a PIN number to your mobile phone once it's detected a successful login, that before it will actually give you access to the account, it'll say, okay, step 1's complete, step 2, I'm going to send you a PIN number, please enter this PIN, and then we can access the application. Or it may send you a code to another email address you've set up. You have to enter this in to access the account. These additional layers of authentication just increase the protections on these accounts 100-fold. It is definitely worth, on your most vulnerable accounts, having these types of protections. They will sort of stop these by the numbers types of threats, and by that I mean, when a hacker sets in motion a crack password attack on thousands of accounts, it's a time game, okay? If your password is 5 alphanumerical digits long, it's a very high possibility that that'll get cracked fairly quickly as the bot just goes through and puts in combination after combination. But once you've added secondary layers of authentication, that time that it takes to crack these accounts just blows out, to more and more. And that's what you want to try and do. You want to try and make it as difficult as possible for these people to be successful in what they're attempting. That is the goal. So things like your email accounts, your online banking, any account that holds financial information about yourself, personal information about yourself, should be locked and protected behind these types of, extra layers of security wherever possible. Something else to look at for business particularly is putting in place a cyber security management plan. Now, if you've never heard of one of these, this is an issue. It needs to be addressed. Any and every business should have one of these policies and plans in place. Now, what would you have already that would be similar? Let's say an evacuation plan, a fire emergency plan for if there is a fire, a bomb, or a threat to the building, that kind of thing. You've probably got a plan in place as mandated by government to say, what would we do? And why do you have one of these? Well, it's because us as humans, sometimes we don't react the best in high stress situations. So it's good to have these types of policies in place to just say, okay, something bad has happened. I need this document to refer to because I can't think clearly in the present moment. Wonderful. I've got this document here. This explains to me the policies, procedures in place to handle the current stressful situation I'm going through. This is what a cybersecurity management plan is for. Okay, you've been the victim of a ransomware attack. Let me refer to my management plan. Okay, steps. Step number 1, ransomware, contact said organization. Step number 2, identify threat. Like it'll list you through these important steps so that you're not having to think on the fly, because every second you waste in trying to figure out what's happened and figure out how to stop or counter these threats from occurring, that is time wasted, very valuable time wasted that could have been spent on dealing with the issue if you had a proper policy in place. The other thing is that cybersecurity insurance has come into the light recently, as many organizations sort of fall back for, okay, if I'm a victim of a ransomware attack that costs me millions, it's okay. I have a cybersecurity insurance plan that will pay out and help me cover the costs of such a horrendous attack. Fantastic. You should have these. Good to have. However, if you don't have a management plan in place, will your policy pay out? There's a high chance it will not. It's the same kind of thing where, you have car insurance for your vehicle. However, you've been driving a unregistered, unroadworthy vehicle that you haven't spent any money or time or care on. If you're at fault, your vehicle's at fault, and it's found that the vehicle was dodgy, will your insurance pay out? It's possible it won't. The same policy applies here to your cybersecurity. You have to spend time and effort, have a policy in place if you hope that these insurances will cover you in the event of a horrible incident. All right. Document control and backups. Now, I am being mindful that we've been going here for about 25 minutes. I did say we'd leave time for questions at the end, and we have a few things still to cover, so I will sort of make sure we focus through these fairly quickly. Once again, future webinars will come back to some of these points in more detail, and if any one of these strikes you as something that you're really concerned about, please reach out to me in the comments or in DMs after the video, please, or the live stream, sorry. Document control and backups refers to documents that you invoice, like invoices or other documents that you supply or have ingoing or outgoing from your organization. Do you handle all elements of that document control? Could someone intercept one of these documents and change critical information like your BSB and account number when invoicing? And then that reaches the client pays that invoice, it goes to that scammer's, that criminal's accounts instead of your own because you didn't handle the document control process properly. So understanding that process, understanding the risks involved when sending documents, receiving documents, and making sure those documents get sent and received as they should is critical to this type of thing. There is systems and policies you can implement to help make sure that goes off without a hitch. Backups helps you with things like ransom attacks or other attacks that target your network and try to lock you out of your data. Backups is something where if you have them offsite or in a cloud, whatever it may be, you can then restore that information, restore access to that information that was sort of locked out from you because you've been regularly backing up your systems. You don't lose that information. Sure, you may still face the consequences of that information being exposed, but you're not starting from scratch. You're not starting without client lists, without all these documents and invoices and everything you've built up over the years of being in business. You have these backups, you can restore them, making sure that is done properly and that a critical failure that would allow ransomware into your system isn't also going to compromise your backups, because that's when a business is truly in bad. It's when it gets really horrible. Training, education, sort of what you're doing here, listening to this webinar today. Training for yourself, for your employees, workshops to show what these sort of phishing attacks look like, what a social engineering attack may look like, training in new systems and understanding of these common threats, helping people talk about what they've seen, what they need to look out for. This is the type of thing that will help you yourself as a business owner or your employees identify these threats before they impact your business. And that's what we're really all about. If we can help you through training and education, understand and identify these threats so that we don't have to come in afterwards and help you with the mitigation and recovery. That is what I want for everyone. I want you to be able to stop these things in their tracks, identify when these attacks or threats are occurring, and put a stop to them before we get to the horrible cleanup afterwards. Now, regular vulnerability assessments, the sort of the bread and butter of what an organization like myself does. This is when we come into a business and we help you identify the vulnerable threat factors for your business and give you the the mitigation options to make sure you're aware of where your business is vulnerable and how you can patch up these vulnerabilities. Some of these things can be small. It's like, okay, I want to focus on my website. Okay, we do a website vulnerability assessment. Is your website particularly vulnerable to certain things? Or we come into the workplace itself and we identify, is your network secure? Is it vulnerable to network intrusions? This type of thing. This is really what every organization should be doing just regularly, because it's the type of thing, if you've never had one done, you have no idea where your business is vulnerable and just what that could cost you if, unfortunately, a bad actor was to find these vulnerabilities before you yourself found them and patched them. All right, so that is the main bits of security advice I can give you today on it. Once again, this is essentials, a foundation course. We will build on these in the future. Speaking of future webinars and timeframes, what we have today is the Cybersecurity for Small Business, the Essentials webinar we've gone through. On the 6th of the 12th, we will be doing another free webinar, similar sort of framework to this, around about 30 minutes. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Time is valuable to us all, and this is purely something that's supposed to help you understand, and you can reach out later for more questions or concerns. we'll be doing one that targets social media threat analysis in particular. So anything to do with social media. Do you host your business on a social media platform? Do you engage with clients, advertisers, sponsors through social media? What's your threat analysis there? What do you need to be aware of, and how can you help protect yourself? So that'll focus completely on that. And on the 15th of the 12th, we'll be going through what is the vulnerability assessment. We'll be showing you some examples of vulnerability assessments, what they can do, what they can help uncover, why they're so important for businesses to consider and have sort of regular vulnerability assessments completed. Two other important dates there for you to consider this year is in a couple of days, now tomorrow actually, the Basic Business Grants registrations of interest opens up. It's from the 24th of the 11th to the 5th of the 12th, and that is an application where you put in place your registrations of interest for that $5,000 business basic grants, and you can, I believe for the first time, actually apply cybersecurity frameworks to that grant. If you want to increase your cybersecurity presence, have certain websites or other networks tested for vulnerabilities, you can include these as part of your basic grant this time around, and the government will help you fund making sure that those things are up to date. Now, if your registration is successful, they will then invite you to complete a full application, and that'll be from the 12th of the 12th to the 23rd of the 1st, 23, when you'll sort of incorporate that full application, which will have sort of the information about what you're going to spend that grant on. Now, I would like to let you know that at this point in time, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chats. Apart from the bots, I can see there's a couple of people hanging out. If you have something here you'd like to ask now, we have a little bit of time that we can go over these with. Otherwise, I would encourage you in the comments to sort of interact there, ask some questions, and I will do my best to reply to those in the comments. If it's a personal question about something you're concerned about, please reach out to me on any one of those social media platforms you see linked there, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And that has been our webinar for today. As you can see there, we are doing some packages based on the business basic grants I mentioned. If you are looking to put together a really sort of well-rounded package to put forward to Queensland government for that application, maybe some business coaching, some marketing, but you want to increase your cybersecurity presence too. Here's some pretty sort of well-rounded packages that can be a small part of that $5,000 spend that you're allowed to with the grant. It can give you some vulnerability assessments, some security consultations, the kind of thing that's very important, even some training with the $1,000 package, some things that are really important to help you as you grow, also protect your business and yourself. Now, we can tailor make, package for the full $5,000 grant spend that is allowed. That would be something where we'd consult with you. We'd talk about what you're most concerned about, how your business operates, and we'd tailor make a package that would best suit your business for that full spend to really give you a complete cybersecurity sort of package that would help protect your business going forward. You can see my email there, the website address. Please feel free to reach out. And that has been our first free webinar, take 2 of the Cybersecurity Essentials. Thank you very much for joining. I'm glad we could redo this one and people could come out, hang out and chill and relax with us, and that the sound was working this time. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you all. Hopefully you learned something today, and look out for those future webinars. And please interact with me on the comments section, or reach out to me on social media via LinkedIn or any of the other places where we are hosted, and ask those questions, or book in for your consultations today. Okay, thank you very much. You have a great rest of your day. Thanks for hanging out. Bye for now.